In the heart of Egbima land lay two villages, Okoji and Amodu, separated by a dense forest. Their rivalry stretched back many generations. Okoji boasted of their hunting skills, claiming to be the protectors of the forest. Amodu, however, prided themselves on their fishing and believed they were the true custodians. One evening, the leaders of both villages met at the market. "You steal from our land," accused Enz Ebiola of Okoji. "And you poison our rivers," countered Baba Ebi of Amodu. Their voices grew louder as the crowd watched. Pride fueled their anger, and soon the villages avoided each other completely. In this growing tension, two youths, Ogogo of Amodu and Tori of Okoji, were unaware that destiny had plans for them. Ogogo was a brave young man, known for his strength and fishing skills. He often spent his evenings by the river, dreaming of a peaceful future. His father, Baba Ebi, warned him about Okoji. "They are our enemies, my son. Never trust them." Ogogo nodded, though he did not share his father's hatred. One day, Ogogo's fishing canoe drifted too far into Okoji waters. "This is forbidden," shouted an Okoji hunter, drawing his spear. Ogogo quickly paddled back, but the incident fueled tensions between the villages. "They want to start a war," claimed Baba Ebi angrily. Ogogo felt uneasy. He knew the villages were on the brink of something dangerous. Torai, a strong and determined girl from Okoji, spent her days exploring the forest. Unlike others, she loved the land shared by both villages. Her mother often scolded her. "The forest is dangerous. Amodu people are not to be trusted." But Tori loved the peace of the trees. One afternoon, Tori found an ancient idol buried beneath fallen leaves. It was small, golden, and glowing faintly in the sunlight. She picked it up carefully, feeling its warmth. "This must belong to the spirits," she whispered. Her heart raced. What did it mean? Unknowingly, Tori had disturbed something sacred, and the spirits of the land had taken notice. Days later, chaos struck. The golden idol vanished. Villagers from Okoji accused Amodu of stealing it. "You have angered the spirits," shouted Enz Ebiola. A delegation from Amodu arrived, led by Baba Ebi. "We did no such thing," he protested. "Why blame us for what we know nothing about?" The villagers argued for hours until Baba Ebi turned to leave. "If the spirits are angry, let them decide who is guilty." That night, strange things began to happen. Crops withered, rivers dried up, and the forest became eerily silent. Fear gripped both villages. Torai hid the idol under her bed. She realized its disappearance had unleashed the curse upon their lands. Determined to save his people, Ogogo decided to enter the forbidden part of the forest to seek answers. His father protested, but Ogogo was firm. "If I don't go, we will all suffer," Ogogo said bravely. Early the next morning, he left with nothing but his machete and a water god. Meanwhile, Tori could no longer bear the guilt. She decided to return the idol to the forest. "I must put things right," she whispered. As dawn broke, Ogogo and Tori unknowingly ventured into the same part of the sacred forest. The air was heavy, and the trees seemed to whisper. Ogogo moved cautiously, listening to the rustling leaves. The forest seemed alive, watching his every step. Suddenly, he heard footsteps. Torai emerged from behind a tree, holding the idol close to her chest. Ogogo froze. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice calm but firm. Torai looked up, startled. "I mean no harm. I must return this to the forest," she stammered, clutching the golden idol tightly. Ogogo's eyes widened as he recognized it. "That idol caused this curse," he exclaimed. Torai nodded shamefully, her courage wavering. The two stared at each other, realizing they were now bound by the same mission, to restore peace. As they ventured deeper, the air grew colder. Shadows stretched across their path. "The spirits are angry," Tori whispered, her hands trembling. Suddenly, the ground beneath them shook. The trees groaned as if in pain. A voice echoed through the forest. "Return what is sacred, or face destruction." Ogago grabbed Tori's arm. "We must hurry before it's too late," he urged. Tori nodded, her resolve strengthening. The golden idol began to glow brighter as if guiding them. "It wants to be returned to its rightful place," said Tori softly. Together, they moved toward the heart of the forest, unaware of the challenges that awaited them. At the forest center stood an ancient tree, its roots spreading like arms. Tori held up the idol, but a deep growl filled the air. A massive figure emerged from the shadows. It was the spirit guardian, its form towering and covered in leaves. "Why have you disturbed my peace?" it roared. Ogago stepped forward boldly. "We come to return what was taken. Punish us if you must, but spare our villages." The guardian's eyes glowed red. "One of you must prove your worth. Only then will the curse be lifted," it declared. Fear gripped Tori, but Ogago whispered, "We'll do whatever it takes." The guardian pointed to a distant clearing. The guardian led them to a clearing where a giant stone lay, half buried in the earth. "Move this stone," it commanded. "Only the pure of heart can succeed." Ogago stepped forward, sweat dripping from his brow. He pushed and strained, but the stone barely moved. "It's impossible," he muttered. Tori touched his shoulder. "Let me try." Ogago hesitated but stepped aside. Tori knelt before the stone, whispering a prayer to the spirits. Suddenly, the ground trembled. The stone shifted as if responding to her plea. Ogago stared in disbelief. "How did you do that?" he asked. Tori smiled faintly. "It's not strength. It's trust in the spirits." The guardian watched, impressed. The guardian spoke. "The curse was born from pride and hatred. To lift it, you must unite your villages and end the rivalry." Ogago looked at Tori. "But how will we convince them?" he asked. Tori's gaze was steady. "We'll show them the truth." The guardian handed them the idol. "Take this back, but warn your people, the spirits will not forgive betrayal again." As they began their journey home, the forest seemed lighter. Birds chirped, and the trees whispered blessings. Tori and Ogago felt hope stirring in their hearts. But they knew the hardest path lay ahead, bringing peace to two villages blinded by hatred. The sun was setting as Ogago and Tori reached the edge of the forest. Their villages were visible in the distance, divided by fields of silence. "We'll go to Okoji first," Tori said. Ogago nodded, though he knew it wouldn't be easy. "We must stand together," he replied. The villagers of Okoji gathered as Tori held up the idol. "The spirits gave us a warning," she began. "This hatred must end." Enz Ebiola stepped forward. "Why should we believe you?" he asked harshly. Tori turned to Ogago. "Because both villages are suffering." Her words rang true, and whispers spread through the crowd. The villagers began to listen. Ogago led Tori to Amodu the next morning. Baba Ebi was furious when he saw the idol. "You went with her. She's from Okoji," he shouted. "She speaks the truth, father," Ogago said calmly. "This idol is a sign. The spirits demand peace." The villagers muttered in confusion. Baba Ebi's pride was wounded. "We have always been strong. Why should we trust them now?" he asked, his voice rising. Tori stepped forward. "Because the forest is dying, and soon your rivers will too," she replied softly. "This is bigger than our pride." The villagers paused. Ogago could see doubt breaking through their stubbornness. For the first time in years, the leaders of Okoji and Amodu agreed to meet. It was a tense gathering, held at the edge of the forest. Enz Ebiola and Baba Ebi stared at each other, silent and stern. Finally, Ogogo spoke. The spirits demand unity. If we refuse, our lands will die. Torai held up the idol. This must be returned together, as a sign of our alliance. The crowd gasped. Together, someone whispered. Baba Ebi hesitated, then nodded. We cannot fight the spirits. Hence Ebiola grumbled but agreed. For the sake of our children. A fragile peace began to form as both villages prepared for the ceremony. The villagers gathered at the forest edge, carrying torches and drums. For the first time in years, Okoji and Amodu stood side by side. Ogogo and Tori led the way, holding the golden idol. The forest seemed alive, its branches swaying with the rhythm of the drums. At the sacred tree, Tori placed the idol at its roots. A soft glow spread through the forest. The spirit guardian's voice echoed. Peace has been restored. The villagers fell to their knees, awed by the sight. The curse was lifted. Rivers flowed again, and crops began to thrive. Ogogo turned to Tori. You saved us, he said. Torai smiled. We saved each other. With the curse lifted, the villages celebrated together. Children played, elders shared stories, and food was exchanged freely. The rivalry was no more. Enzebiola and Baba Ebi stood together, their faces softened. We were blind for too long, said Baba Ebi. Our pride nearly destroyed us. Torai and Ogogo watched the scene, their hearts full of hope. This is just the beginning, Ogogo said quietly. Torai nodded. A new dawn for both villages. In the days that followed, Okoji and Amodu worked together to rebuild their lands. The forest thrived, and the rivers teemed with fish. The spirit guardian watched from the shadows, satisfied. Peace had returned, and balance was restored. Months after the curse was lifted, Amodu and Okoji lived in harmony. The rivers flowed freely, and the forest thrived once more. Peace had become a way of life. Ogogo often visited Okoji to see Tori. Together, they worked to unite the children of both villages, teaching them stories of the forest and the importance of peace. One evening, beneath the ancient tree where the idol had been returned, Ogogo spoke softly. Tori, the spirits brought us together for a reason. I want you to be my wife. Torai smiled, her heart full of joy. I will stand with you, Ogogo, always. Our love will bind our people forever. Their wedding became a grand celebration, held at the very place where their journey began. The people of Amodu and Okoji gathered together, singing, dancing, and feasting. For the first time in living memory, the two villages celebrated as one.